for over here? After they stay, what would resonate with them? And, I think it's just understanding who your guest is, what your positioning is, and really just knowing how to, implement that at each stage and understanding where those key points are.
You're listening to Slick Talk, the hospitality podcast, a podcast for those who are in and around the hospitality industry who love, live, and breathe what they do. You can join us for candid and unscripted conversations with hospitality experts and founders as we go deeper into their personal stories while they're sharing their triumphs and trials that got them to where they are today. I'm your host, Will Slickers, and you're listening to an episode of Slick Talk, the hospitality podcast. Now, let's begin. All right, Nathan, another minute with Minute. And my question is, not only am I a remote manager, but I'm not the most tech savvy. How easy is it to install a minute sensor into my property?
Good question, Will. We've made the software in such a way that we hope it's really easy for almost anyone to install. If you've installed any sort of other electronic device in the past, like a Google Home or Alexa or something, then you should have no problem installing Minute. From the physical installation standpoint, there's a magnetic plate with a 3M adhesive on the back. So it's literally as easy as peel and stick in most cases. You can affix it with a screw if you need to. Most of our users don't. And then as far as installing the actual device within our system, it should take you just a few minutes. And it's essentially just connecting it to Wi-Fi, giving it a name and a few other details, and you're good to go.
I love it. Super simple and to the point, as we like it. Another minute with Minute, folks. And now back to the episode. All right. The one and only legend of hospitality, Jeremy Wells. Welcome to the podcast. How are we doing, my friend?
I'm doing great. Thank you, Will. Thank you for having me.
Of course. Of course. This is, I wish the podcast listeners who have been around for the last 5, 4, maybe even 3 years could see through my eyes for like maybe a second, because I remember getting started in 2018, and then I see your name pop up and I see a couple of, like, I used to listen to the Fuel Hotel Marketing podcast, and there's a lot of podcasts that kind of started around the same time. And it's just crazy to me to see how full circle it can come from a hotel management, or hotel manager starting a podcast, and then seeing your guys' face and names and Longitude and all the stuff that you guys were doing. So now having you on the show, it just is really cool. So want to share that with the audience, because I think it's a fun geek out moment to see like the longevity of the show, and then also the people you meet along the way that like you would expect to have on sooner, but it doesn't line up, and now it's like the perfect time. So anyways, that's my ramble of the morning, as I'm pretty caffeinated. But Jeremy, for the listeners who don't know you, haven't gotten to see your journey through my eyes, watching online and kind of through our mutual network, can you give us a background of who you are, what you do, and a little bit of the story, kind of what got everything started for you in hospitality?
Yeah, definitely. I'll try to make it quick. Midwesterner, born and raised in the Ozarks in Missouri. I always had a design eye and artistic slant to everything that I did growing up. So that kind of catapulted me right out of high school into the design field. I got really involved in, various agency roles as creative director. I got into user experience design for about 10 years or so in my career. That's right when, iOS development and e-commerce and mobile apps and all of that started taking shape. So I kind of rode that wave for a while, worked for a lot of great agencies, and worked on a lot of cool projects through that time. That was my entrance really into kind of user experience thinking and kind of the methodology and the approach and considering the, psychographics, demographics, decision making from a customer standpoint, more in the digital space and online space. But back in 2018, I left an agency that I was working for remotely. They were based in New York. And I had always had this itch to, the entrepreneurial itch, but I'd never really scratched it. So, 2018, I decided to go forward with it and run full steam ahead. I had met Dustin Myers, who's founded Longitude, a year or two prior to that. And we just started having some conversations in 2018 and realized we were, you know, aligned in a lot of ways with our goals and where we wanted to go and what we wanted to do and the projects we wanted to be working on. And so we just decided to partner up. And so I joined as a partner at Longitude. That was, my first jump into the hospitality space. And at the time, we were primarily focused on restaurants and food and beverage and doing a lot of work in that space. And over the course of about 18 months, we kind of pivoted slightly, but really just opened up our purview of hospitality into a broader sense, encompassing not just food and beverage, but hotels, resorts, and really even over the years, even outside of hospitality, clients were attracting our, multifamily mixed use developments, other types of retail spaces. And it all really centers around this idea of guest experience and placemaking. And, a lot of the similar concepts that started really in hospitality when you're talking about a guest and a hotel and that journey, are translating into other industries and categories, which I think is really fascinating. And it's just afforded us some really fun opportunities to work on things outside of hospitality or traditional hospitality, but also infuse hospitality thinking and guest experience design into a lot of the projects we work on. So that's where we're at today. And like you mentioned, 2020, I think was a huge learning year for us as it was everybody, kind of learning what we like, what we don't like, where we need to change, where we need to stay the same and making some tough decisions through that. And, that was the same year I published through Longitude, the Future Hospitality. We launched our podcast, Future Hospitality Podcast, and just really started digging our heels in even deeper into hospitality when a lot of people took that chance to kind of, try something new and get out of the industry. We decided to dig our heels even deeper. And I think it's, paid off and been a good investment for us.
Yeah, you and me both. You and me both. I'm curious, where do you gravitate more towards since that you're not only an author once, you have two books. And we can talk about, I think it's what called Indie Hotel. And
Yep.
yes, Indie Hotel, which you published this year. And, I'm curious from the audio medium to the written medium, where do you feel like you gravitate towards more?
I'm I'm definitely more of an as far as like what I create, I'm more of a writer. I like to write down. That's kind of how my books have evolved is just as I learn, as I read, as I consume other podcasts and other things I'm learning, I just write down everything. And then, I like to take thoughts and ideas that I'm gleaning from other people and like put my own spin on it. And, I write inside articles through Longitude and publish those. I write just personal notes and ideas and then I kind of turn those into both articles and then eventually, a lot of those articles have kind of morphed into an outline for books. So that's kind of how my books have evolved too, is just, taking I really just start with an outline and kind of a concept of what the message I want to convey, outline it, and then just start plugging away at filling in content. Future Hospitality was my first. It was more focused on kind of how we bridge the gap between brand strategy, brand development at an agency, and then bridging the gap to the guest experience and how that manifests and is implemented in the real world for hotels, resorts, and hospitality brands. And then Indie Hotel, which was published, as you mentioned, this year, was more focused on the product type of just independent hotels. And it's kind of a love letter, so to speak, to indie hotels and just talking about the history of them, how they've grown, why people are, moving towards independent hotels more and more frequently. And I also touch on, the pros and cons of a chain or franchise versus an independent. I don't, I do my best not to disparage chains or soft brands or anything like that. Cause I mean, there's definitely a purpose for those and there's benefits to those from an owner perspective, but I just loved indie mindset. And I think, that's the most exciting for me personally. So it was kind of my best effort at putting that together and sharing it with the world.
I think most of the listeners of this pod know I'm not the best reader, definitely not the best writer. I definitely use ChatGPT for a lot of my stuff these days. Just kidding, not all of it, mostly Grammarly now. But the audio medium has been so special for me. But I've always kind of envied the writers and the readers of the world, right? Where you have the patience to go through that process, whether it's writing or reading. And I haven't read your books, but definitely adding them to my cart today. I'm very curious in the sense of, you know, getting to hear your story. Your books have been integrated into the Cornell curriculum. So how does that really like I the question I'm trying to form out of this is basically that's gotta mean something, right? Like that's gotta mean something special to you. Like you said, the indie hotel was a love letter, right? So how did that make you feel? What has kind of been the ripple effect from having these thoughts and words in your head to then on paper to then now being taught and teach to hopefully the next generation of hospitality entrepreneurs that come in and maybe look at our industry a little bit differently. I would love to know just like where does your mind go with all of that?
Right. Yeah. I mean, to your point, I think there a little bit of me when they first reach out when the assistant to the teacher or the professor reached out to me from Cornell. It was a little bit of like disbelief. And then there was also like, I think I've always kind of dealt with like the imposter syndrome, as a lot of people probably do, but it's like, oh man, like, I don't know, like, I'm not the best author either and best writer. I mean, I do my best, but I was just kind of like, oh, I hope it's, actually going to add value to the students and all of that. So there's a little bit of like, honestly, like fear on that
Mhm.
side. But when that subsided and I kind of came to terms with, being okay with not being some award-winning awesome author and just putting my ideas out there and sharing what I have to share, it was really a huge honor. And I can't express that enough. Like to be in the curriculum at the stage where these students are at, to where there's a chance that, some of the thinking and the approach and some of the ideas that I've shared might impact, the future generation of hospitality and people that are coming out of Cornell. It's just like such a huge honor to be a part of that, small part of that. And, I really admire them for taking a chance on me and, including that. And so it's been a fun journey. And I've had students reach out to me and after that and, with emails here and there, just thanking me for writing it. And so it's been really fun to kind of see that, the results of that.
I love that. And it's always funny. Every guest that I usually have, you can tell when someone comes from the industry and someone doesn't, right? Where it's like, hey, I saw a problem in hospitality, so I created this business, never of operating a hotel, or a lot of my cases, a short term rental, or whatever it might be, right? And for you, you joined Longitude without any kind of real hospitality experience, but then now you guys are hotel owners. You own your own brand, and so I think there's some specialness in the ability to say you walk the talk and yeah, or you walk the walk, you talk the talk. And for me, I would love to kind of glimpse into your experience at Longitude, right? Working with brands, creating the creative side for them to now merging into the hotel ownership space. What was that transition like for you?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think to your point, someone that's not from the industry in their background, that can go, I think, one of two ways. You can, you know, try to fake it and like pretend like you're a pro and seasoned veteran in the hospitality industry. Or like me, you can admit that you don't have all the answers and just try to surround yourself with people that do. And so
Yeah.
that was a huge part of a lot of lessons I learned over the years is, I don't need to be the subject matter expert in every single thing when it comes to hotels, but I want to be the subject matter expert when it comes to brand development for hotels and hospitality brands and how that, translate through the entire guest journey and operations and marketing and all of that. But there's other people that are a lot more experienced, a lot better at everything else. So I'm okay with that. And so I think a big part of the transition from agency through Longitude and, serving clients to now becoming hotel owners through the Ozarker is team building. It's building your inner circle of people you trust, bringing on the right people, and making sure that you're surrounding yourself with people that know what they're doing and better than you, ideally. And then when you get that special group together, I think great things can happen. But yeah, that whole journey, I could talk about the entire thing, or I don't know how you want me to start, but it's definitely a interesting journey for me at least. So
Well, let's talk about the inception, right? So,
yeah.
Longitude, you join and you write this book, Future of Hospitality in 2020. And like you said, a lot of people decide, hey, you know what? COVID, this whole world shut down thing, people are getting rude when they're going to restaurants or hotels are closed or whatever the situation, right? Is it's not for me anymore. I think this is my cutoff. And you went double down. You're like, yeah, this is us. And now the inception point of like, hey, not just being an agency, we're gonna buy a property. You put a lot of time, money, and effort into it. Obviously, it wasn't a perfect turnkey property, especially to create a brand around the Ozarker itself, which has beautiful design. I've seen the pictures, I see the Instagram, it looks great. And for all the people listening, definitely check out the links in the show notes so you can see it for yourself as you hear this conversation. But you know, where does the inception moment begin? Does it begin early on and then just took time, or did it happen pretty quick?
Yeah, I think the inception, it's hard to pinpoint exactly when, but as in a lot of cases, I found the point of an inception or what you would consider that and where you actually are making decisions, like there's usually a lot of dreams and aspirations that are building up to that kind of moment. And for us, what that looked like, as we were, 2019, 2020, getting like really digging our heels into hospitality and hotels specifically, bringing on more clients in that realm and just like gathering inspiration and just what's our like dream client and like having conversations like that. Through the years, we've had the pleasure of visiting a lot of like amazing properties and getting to experience them and part of that you're gathering inspiration and you're gathering, I mean, just as probably a lot of people in the industry do, like, I've talked to so many people about, they have a dream of one day opening their own hotel, and you just start to think of like, I love this, I might do this different, or I think I can do this better, and you're kind of just formulating, ideas that are really abstract at that moment. But when we started to look locally, again, I'm a Midwesterner, born and raised, and live in the Ozarks. We started having these conversations of like, man, there's so many cool things on the coast, in the mountains, and all these other regions, but the Midwest, like, there's not a lot of cool stuff, really, especially in the Ozarks. There's just not a lot of great stuff that like would attract someone like us, or this kind of younger traveler. And so we started kind of we actually tried various concepts, like, and there's a couple of approaches I've found where you like develop a vision and a concept, and then you try to identify a property. And then, some people identify a property and then they build a concept around it. And I think both have their pros and cons. But we were kind of formulating the concept in our mind. And then I stumbled upon this property. I also got my real estate license back in 2021, and started looking for opportunities, commercial opportunities. And I found this property, and I was like, I think that has the bones for being something cool. I sent it to Dustin and he agreed. And so we started the journey, and we started taking some of the ideas and inspiration we had built upon, and, you know, taking an Ozarks slant on it and kind of a local spin, and putting the concept together, the visions for the programming ideas. And then, we started having conversations with the broker in that time too, and the current owner. And we were very close to getting it under contract. And we were actually with a couple of other partners at that time. And the two other partners that we were planning to partner with, about, a week or two before we were very close to having a signed PSA, they, you know, decided kind of the last minute, like, we actually don't have time to do this, and we're not gonna be able to do it and commit to it. And Dustin and I like looked at each, we went to coffee or lunch, and, I remember Dustin looked at me and like, what are we going, what's the plan? What are we gonna do? How are we gonna make this work? And I looked at him and I was like, I have no clue, but let's do it. So we decided to do it. We pulled the trigger, we put the earnest money down, and had 90 days to figure it out. And pretty much a day after that, I reached out to Stephen Chan with Eagle Point Hotels, who I'd built a relationship with through our podcast and just through Independent Lodging Congress. And I asked him if he had any interest to fly from San Francisco to the Ozarks and check out a property with me. And so he flew in and I showed him around and we gave him a big tour and he liked it. So he joined us as partners and that kind of kicked us off into the next steps. So it
I
was
love
a
that.
big risk.
Yeah. Well, and it's crazy. I want to kind of come back to a beginning moment for you. You talked about you had the entrepreneurial itch and never been able to really scratch it. Did any of this ever like cross your mind when you joined Longitude as a partner and be like, yeah, we're gonna get into all this stuff? And like, I don't know, because everyone just thinks of this entrepreneurial journey as such a glamour sometimes, right? And in reality, it's just a lot of risk taking. And whether it's a big risk like buying a hotel when you have two other partners or however many partners drop out and you're left alone with one partner to financially bet, to put into it. That's a big risk. That's a pretty big risk. So did that ever cross your mind like getting into entrepreneurship?
I mean, the first and back in 2018 when I first was joining as a partner at Longitude, like the concept of purchasing a hotel was not even on my mind at all. So, you know, moving through that journey of that, 3-year period or so, 4-year period to the point where we were really serious about doing it. I think I just kind of learned how exciting hotels and hospitality was. And especially I was getting more interest in real estate, commercial real estate. And it was just such an exciting category of real estate to me. And then on top of that, being able to bring the connections and network and as well as the design thinking and brand thinking that we were bringing from Longitude already and seeing it play out and be successful for our clients, it gave us, I think, more confidence that the concept was going to work and the brand was going to work and resonate well because we've this is something we do with our clients all day long at Longitude. Just we're practicing and putting into place what we're preaching to our clients and actually doing it for ourselves. And so I think we had more confidence on that front. And then adding in, once we brought in Steven and Eagle Point, this isn't their first rodeo and they've done this a lot of times. And so they helped guide us through the rest of it and like kind of took us under their wing to, finish the underwriting, more due diligence, put the full deal together and get it closed and go through all that. And I've learned so much through that process over the last, 2 years. And it's helped me be a better, well, one, just grow in my knowledge of, hotel management, development, investment, all of that, but also be a better partner and provider to our clients through Longitude because I have more context. I have a better understanding from an ownership perspective of what their challenges are and what they're thinking. And so I feel like we have more to offer now as an agency to the benefit of our clients. And so that's been a really fun kind of transition for us too, is having more in-depth conversations with our clients beyond just the brand element, but talking about, how is what we're doing today going to impact your operations, going to impact your marketing, going to impact your programming, your staffing, your culture, how like and this is how we've seen it play out at the Ozarker, this is what we've found. And like we have better conversations, I think. And it's just been really fun to see that play out.
Yeah, I was gonna say, but we'll go into that part here in a second. I kind of have two questions for you though. First one is the Ozarker ever inspired from the TV show The Ozarks? Any inspiration from that TV show at all?
I don't think so. I haven't actually seen the show, but surprisingly, living in the Ozarks, but I don't think there's much inspiration, at least from what I've gathered. But every time I have a conversation with someone, that's outside of our region, that's the first thing they always mention is the show The Ozarks. We're trying to figure out from a PR perspective how to get Jason Bateman out to the grand opening and the ribbon cutting, but it was going to be too much of a. I just didn't think it was going to work out, but I thought that'd be kind of funny.
I was gonna say, if you haven't seen the show, it was a far shot for it to actually be inspired, with that, but yeah, it's something I was trying to hold off not to ask you right in the beginning of the episode, so glad I made it about 23
Oh, yeah.
minutes in.
So I
The
think that's a
second
new
question.
record.
Perfect. I guess next question, maybe not even a question, just a topic I wanna dive into with you because when we were chatting about this episode and kind of like a direction to go, I think it's one thing, it kinda again, it comes back to the walking the walk and talking the talk. as an agency, you guys are able to really like preach brand and like all these certain best practices, right? Like, you know, your craft and you know it works through seeing it work with previous clients or other agencies and, you know, other examples. But doing it yourself is so different, and being able to now go to your current or future clients and say, "Hey, like, not only have we done this with however many hotels and brands before you, but we actually have done it with our own." And taking that creative experience, the digital experience, whether it's building out a better website that has a better UX and UI for the guests to fully and capture the brand and what they're about to embark on in this journey of staying at that property, to then applying that on site and how that digital journey transfers into a human realistic life journey, whether they're staying with you for a night, a week, a month. Granted, I doubt there's people staying in hotels for a month unless they're like a extended stay brand, but you know what I'm saying, the overall kind of experience that's about to happen with their stay. What are like the top key factors that you see that apply from a digital experience to a in-person experience? And when I'm saying key factors, I'm more or less trying to say like what transfers? What are the things that are super important from the digital to the physical?
Yeah, I think, one thing that we do at Longitude, to your point, from a branding perspective and a guest experience perspective is we take our clients that we're working through like the strategy of the brand and how that's implemented. And we go through the entire guest journey and the experience and different touch points along the way. And digital is a huge pre-stay touch point. You're talking about digital from a website and booking engine perspective. You're talking about digital from a social media and PR perspective. You're talking about all your OTAs and how you're listed there and kind of the language you're using through that. And, there's a lot of different digital touch points that are just as valuable as, when someone's staying at your hotel and they're in you know, the four walls of your property. And I think, a lot of people, a lot of clients we've worked with in the past and some we haven't, you see them so focused on just when someone checks in till they check out, that they're missing a lot of opportunities on, the front end of their stay and the back end of their stay with various touch points that you can really cultivate and curate to make them special too and memorable. A lot of the same thinking, as I mentioned about my previous kind of my first career and the digital space and e-commerce and iOS and all of that app design. Um, it's the thinking and kind of the motivations. Like we're asking a lot of the same questions as far as like, you know, what needs does this customer or this guest have? What motivations, is what's motivating their decision at this point in time? What fears might they have? What hangups might they have? And then you're kind of using that to inform your decision as far as what that touch point should look like or what this moment should look like. And so in the physical experience, that manifests in, how do we treat the guest? Actually, I'll back up even before they check in. What's the arrival moment look like? When they're
Mhm.
pulling up to your property, what's your exterior signage look like? What's the lighting look like? The ambiance of your space, is there music playing outside your lobby as they approach? Once they enter, what do they smell? What's the scent that they get? How do you want them to, how do you want that scent to evoke certain thoughts in their mind? Or, how do you greet them? What's the check-in experience like? How efficient can we make it to make it really painless? One thing for us at the Ozarker was, we are a very family friendly destination in Branson, Missouri. And we do get a lot of families through the Ozarks. So we wanted the Ozarker to really reflect that and resonate with guests that are going there. So we were thinking through, you know, I'm a parent too. I have two kids, so I get to understand from a parent perspective. But when you're checking in a hotel, like sometimes it takes like 15 minutes. You're just sitting there in a lobby. Your kids are like breaking stuff and running all around, and you're stressing out carrying all this luggage. And so we were like, what are some things that we could do to like get the kids distracted or doing stuff where the parents don't have to stress out? So we added like a children's play nook in the lobby where, kids just like magnets go right to that. They start playing with stuff and tinkering and reading books. And we also do at check-in, we partnered with a local company who does saltwater taffy, and it's like famous
Mm.
in Branson for the saltwater taffy. So we give the kids a little small package of that. There's lots of stuff to do for kids and families there, and just making it as quick and seamless and painless as possible is our goal. Obviously we don't always execute on that, but we definitely do our best to do that. And so, all of that thinking from a guest experience and just understanding who your guest is. And then when you know who your guest is and you realize that you're not for everybody, that allows you to just think through each stage of that guest journey and like, okay, so knowing this guest, what do they want? What are they looking for at this moment in their guest journey? What are they looking up for over here? After they stay, what would resonate with them? And, I think it's just understanding who your guest is, what your positioning is, and really just knowing how to, implement that at each stage and understanding where those key points are too. So
All right. So you're trying to grow your portfolio and your property management business, but sometimes owners don't have the best peace of mind when it comes to giving up the keys to their home to an unknown brand or company. And of course, let's be honest, sometimes we hear the horror stories of guests and the bad guests that stay in vacation rentals and throw parties. Well, safely as you covered, because not only do they screen your guests that are staying, but they also ensure that you are covered from all things such as ill intent, stupidity, aka vacation brain, and other things like pet damage and theft. While doing that, you are able to partner with Vintory and grow your portfolio with their marketing platform that helps ensure that you are attracting the right owners to your rental program and growing your business in the destination that you are in. Or if you're in multiple destinations, that works too. So get the links in the show notes because both companies have special offers. If you don't use a link, but you end up talking to them, guess what? Just tell them that Will Slicker sent you from Slick Talk, the hospitality podcast, and they'll get you covered. And you can also let them know that maybe you've heard of them on our platform, hospitality.fm. So, of course, like always, make sure you grab the links in the show notes. And thank you guys so much for tuning in to another episode of Slick Talk, the hospitality podcast. Now, back to the episode. I'm curious, how does that impact your tech stack decisions at all? Does that make an impact on who you pick from a vendor's perspective?
yeah, it does. We've implemented some like messaging systems that, help, send out messages through email and through text to help the guest check in. Guests can fill out forms and things prior to the check in to where all they have to do at the front is basically give their name and they get their key card and that's it. So that's been helping, make that more efficient. Eventually, I think we're going to move to, we couldn't fit it in the budget for the first phase, but down the road, we're going to do our best to move to a kind of a key card access where you don't even have to go to the front desk and you just go straight to your door. With exterior corridor, it makes it even better because, you don't have to deal with lugging your luggage to the check-in and then back to your room and vice versa, all this stuff. So just making it as easy as possible. And then, our tech stack, you know, from, our email management system and kind of how we're sending out emails, how that connects to our POS and to our booking engine and all, like just capturing all the information from our guests and consolidating it into one place. It also gives us better insight once a guest does check in, maybe some of their preferences, maybe some of what they're there to stay for, understanding that so we can maybe help celebrate that with them if they're here for a
Mhm.
birthday or for a romantic getaway or something like that. I think we're doing our best to kind of uncover those moments and equip our staff to be able to do that easier too.
Yeah, and there's a couple other things I want to bring up. Back in the day, especially when I started with the Marriott brand. I was an autograph collection. So, there's less creativity when it comes to working with local companies and businesses as you have to kind of go with what the flag tells you, right? Versus now being on the independent side, you have the opportunity to work with a lot of local businesses and offer that local personalization, I think. And, one of the things I always struggled with that in the beginning was, you know, I came from Seattle. I'm not a big Starbucks fan. I actually despise Starbucks in the sense of like their coffee's not that great. So, of course, like having a Starbucks in our lobby, it was the only thing you could really refer people to because it's in your lobby. And even though you love the Dutch Bros or whatever company down the street, you can't really promote it. And so, from a locals perspective, I always kind of said in the beginning, especially when I got into short term rentals, was more of like, hotels fail, and when I say hotels, I don't mean all hotels. I meant more of the bigger brands. They fail at focusing at the 5 blocks around them because they're so focused on creating the Starbucks in the lobby, the this, the that, blah, 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 which is great. There's people that love that, and I definitely have a time and place where that is just it's consistent. I know what to expect. But it does miss out on a big local community. So for you being on the independent side, you have no flag to really tell you what you can have in your lobby. No, you can't have a kid's nook here. You can't give out taffy. Like you don't have really anyone telling you that. What does that open up, and how have you seen that play a bigger role inside of that community locally, from business opportunities or collaborations, maybe growing the economy, jobs, etc. I would be curious to see how that's played a ripple.
Yeah, I mean, local partnerships was like one of the first discussions we were having before we even had the property under contract. From a branding standpoint, who you align yourself with and who you collaborate with is one of a huge important step for an independent hotel. When you align yourself with the right brands, it can do a lot for your brand and do a lot for your goals. If you align yourself with the wrong brands, it can do the opposite. And if, like you said, if you don't align yourself with any local brands or do anything, it's just not going to resonate well, and it's going to flop for a lot of hotels. So for us, we were thinking through, and we do this with our clients too. The Ozarker, from a conceptual level, was let's look at the Ozarks. What makes it special, historically, culturally? What's Why do people visit here? Take the best of all of that, kind of break away from the things that are maybe bad perceptions or reputation with this area. But let's highlight the best parts, and then let's elevate it a little bit to make it more modern, make it more approachable to the modern traveler, right? And in doing that, as a high level concept, we wanted to look at other brands and other people in the area in the Ozarks that are trying to do that too, or doing that effectively. So, from our coffee supplier, who's Kingdom Coffee, who's a local Ozarks brand, they do great stuff. Their coffee shops are like top level design. They're doing amazing stuff. Their roasts are amazing, locally owned. I'm good friends with, the owners, and it's not an easy decision. Like, we need to work with them. We're looking at other brands that have just started up and are trying to like really elevate the brand scene on the Ozarks market. And so we started having conversations with them. We started, even before we were reopened as the Ozarker, we started doing some last Christmas actually. We did a 12 days of Christmas campaign with 12 brands, like local brands, and we were doing collaborative giveaways with them each day for 12 days. And they were super excited about it. What we're trying to do, we were excited to have, be able to access their audience and do a cool giveaway with them. That brought in a lot of followers and a lot of awareness to the Ozarker. And it was just a win-win for everybody. And as we're, going through planning our food and beverage program, as we're going through our merchandise and retail component, some of the programming and activations we're doing on the property, it's all through this local first lens. And as best we can, like, let's think of ways where let's start local and see if there's a provider or someone that can help us with this. And that's our first question. And if not, then we look, outside of that or regional or whatever. But brand partnerships, alignments, it's huge. So very important to independent hotels. And that's really what makes a part of the indie, mindset, kind of the value proposition for indies as a whole is, you get to taste and you get a flavor for the neighborhood you're in, for the area you're in. You get to really experience it in a way that you otherwise wouldn't get to.
Yeah, it's not like they're gonna see the same thing that they're gonna get when they look at Google Maps or Yelp or something like that. It's gonna be a little bit more custom, which leads perfectly into a topic I wanna jump into with you on personalization with the guests, whether it's a first-time guest or a repeat guest. How do you guys approach that as a brand, especially in the independent mindset where, you know, I think a lot of times people try to automate things as much as possible. Human capital is very, very, very tight these days, as you can imagine, with any hospitality business. So how do you guys approach personalization and trying to make that special kind of guest experience moment for guests?
Yeah, I think, I'll just speak from my own personal experience and kind of like how I approach it. I think it's really the servant leadership mindset. and being very empathetic as much as you can at all times towards your team members, towards guests, towards anybody really, day in and day out. I think the hospitality mindset really is outside of the industry of hospitality. It's really a way of living, a way of being. And that's why it can be very difficult for hotels and hospitality brands when they're, even in the hiring process, like it's hard to train someone to be empathetic, to be a good listener, to love other people, and to, just have that hospitality approach. It's hard, very difficult to train that. What's easier is to find someone that has all of those traits inherently, not just who they are as a person, and then train them to do the task in the job description you need them to do. So in a perfect world, I would be hiring, and I think we've done this pretty successfully. The Ozarkers hiring people that love people, that want to go above and beyond, that just have a servant leadership mindset, and in doing so, that gives you a great team of people looking out for moments that they can elevate for a guest, or maybe they note notice little small things, and then they're sensitive to that, and they can address that, or help alleviate it, or help give them recommendations, or just be there for them, and just be aware of what's going on and be present. And you're uncovering and turning over stones, as I think Danny Myers mentioned in his book, of looking for opportunities to really just rise to the occasion. And so you can train some of that, as far as like more from an operational, like just technical standpoint sometimes too. But really, it comes down to a heart positioning of the people you're buying, or people you're buying, people you're hiring, and doing that, I think that gives you a much greater chance of providing a strong guest experience. And I think, to me, that in any organization, I think it's top down, trickle down thing. Trickle down is kind of a negative term, and when you're talking about like government and whatever, but
Yeah.
trickle down from like a GM. Ownership, and then GM, and then the team. Like, everyone needs to have that mindset from the top down. And
Mhm.
when, to practice what you preach, it's avoiding that do as I say, not as I do type thing. Um, you want that to be your whole culture and organization. So it's very difficult, but and when it's done well, I think it can make a huge impact, not just in your property, but in your entire, region. And that's really what we're trying to do with the Ozark, is present the Midwest and the Ozarks is like this heart of hospitality. Come have a great time. Everyone's welcome. That type of approach. So
How do you feel like you guys have done with that mission and goal?
I think we're doing pretty well. There's always room for improvement, and that's why we have calls with our team weekly. We still do that every week with our general manager and Springboard Management, or Springboard Hospitality, who's our management partner. We're still relatively new. We opened in July of this year. So we're working out kinks. We're trying to, catch our stride still. But I think overall, it's been a hugely positive feedback from guests, lots of great reviews, people really excited about it. And so we want to keep that momentum, and keep pleasing guests and having a great time doing it.
Is there ever a vision or a goal of opening up more as the time, unravels and goes on?
Yeah. Yeah. I would love to. We're working on another project I can't really talk about right now, but we are working on another project in Colorado, which I think will be pretty cool. But it's, we definitely have aspirations, especially for me and Dustin, just personally. I think we still have a lot of aspirations for the Ozarks in the Midwest. And so we're still really looking for partners and opportunities in that space. But yeah, midway through, I remember having a conversation with Dustin and Steven about this. And I was like, I feel like I'm either going to never want to do this again, or want to do a lot more of these. And so it's definitely the latter. I want to do, I want to do more of these, and it's a lot of fun, but I now know how much work it takes. So I'm trying to pace my expectations about how it's going to play out. And, it's been one of the hardest things and most fulfilling things I've ever done.
And say most of the hardest things in our life are usually the most impactful in good and bad ways. So It's kind of comes with the territory. I think when you are ready to share more about this Colorado project, please let me know because you're talking about my backyard right now. So definitely would love to hear more and invite you guys on the pod, or if you're in town, let's do it in person shoot. Let's get a fun, maybe an event or a live show going. It'd be super fun.
Yeah.
No, I love this, and I could probably geek out with you for hours and hours and hours about guest experience and journey and all the brand things and tech stacks and localization and community. I am curious though. I recently had Richard Valter from Muse on the podcast, and the guy I call has what I call hospitality theology, and just is he gets biblical with it basically, and it's super inspiring and obviously ambitious because it's a lot, right? You're talking about a journey which most people, I would say from an outside perspective could say, yeah, I stay at a hotel. I'm pretty much there for 8 hours. That's usually to maybe grab a drink, go to bed, wake up, get ready, head out. Or if you're there for, 48 hours, then obviously it's a little bit different. But your time in the property, in stay, is usually looked out from the time of sleeping and maybe using it for a couple activities, happy hour, dinner, etc. Where now hoteliers, Richard talks about expanding into a 365 experience, right? Where how does the hotel brand go beyond just the stay? It goes into the life and to the home and to the travel in general, whether it's with you or anywhere else. Do you ever think the indie side of the industry, outside of maybe the brands from Marriott to Hilton to whoever, do you think there's a possibility where something like the Ozarker becomes a more lifestyle brand rather than a hotel brand for people to stay in, but actually becomes part of like their outer lives, basically, if that makes sense? Do you ever think like the indie hotel sector would get to a point like that?
Yeah, I guess if I'm thinking of it as like a just as we would want brand alignments as an organization or a company, I think, you've always heard individuals that want to align themselves with brands as well. So I think one thing that's been interesting after opening the Ozark and having a lot of guests through the door is, people really resonate and love it to the point, obviously they're buying merchandise and hats and shirts and all that. Um, but they're anticipating their next stay already before they even, leave our doors, and they're becoming like loyal fans of ours, after their stay, and they're sharing. And we have like a private Facebook group that we started, where we have like close to 1,000 people in there that we just kind of post like little nuggets of things that are, we just share privately there. And, I think people want to align themselves with this brand because it's Midwest. It's in the Ozarks. A lot of people, just like Dustin and I, have a lot of pride for where we live and a lot of love for it. But there's just not a lot there hasn't historically been a ton to get excited about, just from a, lodging perspective or a brain perspective. And so we're trying to change that. And I think, to your point, I think the Ozarker and places like that, I think are really valuable from not only just a local travel perspective, but from a regional brand and economic development perspective. It can be, it could be impactful in that way. And we're hoping the Ozarker will be that, to where, when people think of the Ozarks, like we want the Ozarker to be like top on their mind of like bucket list places to stay and align themselves with. So, and I don't know if that's answering your question directly, but I think we definitely want to be something that people bring home with them in a way where, you know, they're already anticipating their next stay. They made great memories, and it's like a legacy for their family. A dream of mine is, 10, 15, 20 years from now, kids that visited the Ozarker have such great memories of the Ozarker. They're bringing their kids and they're bringing their families, and it's just like multi-generational, just, fun. So hopefully, is that what you're getting at?
Definitely, and see, I think the to go more to the rabbit hole of that conversation is a lot of people. I think maybe even hearing that episode probably assume like, oh, this has to be means like you're you're a Nike or an Airbnb, right? Where everything referenced to a short-term rental is now Airbnb, right? Or something like that. And I think, especially being in the media industry, in a niche category, hospitality, hotels, vacation rentals, restaurants, all that stuff, I'm seeing that it doesn't need to be this big grand scale of like you need to become the next Nike and create just do it or
Mhm.
be referenced as an Airbnb. But that 1,000 people that are part of this private community with you guys, that is impacting a lifestyle and a beyond the stay kind of impact with this guest, that you're more than just a hotel. And I think it humanizes it more. So like quality over quantity, basically. You don't need to be a million follower type brand. You could be a 10,000 follower, a 1,000 follower, a 100 follower
Yeah.
brand that has that ripple effect of being more than just a thing that they think about when they're in the 8 hours of sleeping or maybe the weekend getaway. It's something that's anticipated, thought about, applied into their life, and maybe even kind of creating a community that has that ripple effect. Doesn't matter how big the size. So that, yeah, what you said really goes into that perspective of, quality over quantity and, creating something that goes beyond just, hey, I stayed there for a weekend one time in my life. No, it's, hey, I stayed there every summer, brought my kids. My kids now go there. Their kids are going to have kids and they're going to bring their kids there. And hopefully that, the generation of staff and ownership, if it's with you or not, continues to keep that legacy. So yeah, I that's well said. Well said, Jeremy.
Yeah, and just a
Uh,
couple ways we've allowed people to take home the Ozarker with them. I mean, like I said, obviously merchandise, but like shirts and stuff. But we also do Christmas ornaments seasonally that are basically like little enamel coffee mugs. And so, it allows people to make like another moment when they're home, putting it on their tree. I picked together, with the help of an illustrator, a children's book as well called Rusty's Big Adventure in the Ozarks. And that was a really fun book to put together. And people are, I mean, it's flying off the shelves, but guests are taking that home with them and reading it with, and it talks about the Ozarker, and it talks about all the adventure of this dog who gets lost from his family and visits all these cool places in the Ozarks. And but yeah, stuff like that. It gives people, little reminders of their special time at the Ozarker. And, I'd love to be able to replicate that, maybe maybe not in the exact brand of the Ozarker, but in that like that family of brands or collection of brands that are all fit that mold. I'd love to look and find other opportunities in the Ozarks and the Midwest to do that.
that just made the whole episode for me. Rusty's Adventures in the Ozarks. I'm gonna get
Yeah.
that book. That's a book I can
It's
get. I can read.
it's on Amazon. You can check it out, but we have them on our shelves of the Ozarker too. But actually, I was working from the Ozarker a couple weeks ago, and a guest came up to me and was like, "Can you sign this?" And I was kind of shocked. I was like, "So," I signed a little children's book and wrote a little message to her grandson. So that was fun.
Oh, dude, that's so special. That is so special. I love that. I truly do. And honestly, such a great moment or time to wrap up the episode and to let our listeners, I think, leave this episode with a smile. I that put a smile on my face. If you're listening to that just now and you're not smiling, you should see a therapist because that's awesome. I just think that's so cool and so creative. So, I love the out of the box thinking. I think it's for so long, especially as an entrepreneur, I think we can get so stuck with our head down and trying to run the business, making sure you're running the team is running smooth, you're not putting out fires every day. And to hear the creative out of the box thinking that most hotels don't do, right? Like it's you think a lot of people just think of a hotel as a hotel and it is what it is. So to hear the moments outside of the brand and outside of the property, like a children's book or a coffee mug ornament, just it's exciting for me. I geek out over that. So, Jeremy, this has been a real treat and a real pleasure. Obviously, all the listeners and slick talkers out there that listen know I'm going to link everything in the show notes. But if you had one link to send anybody who liked this episode, wanted to connect or get to know more about what you guys are doing, what link would that be to send them to?
Yeah, check out longitudebranding.com, and we have a lot of great resources, and you can connect with us through there.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And as all of you slick talkers know, this is not the one episode that you will be listening to. Hopefully, you'll be tuning in every week. So make sure you like and subscribe to all things Longitude, the Ozarker, and everything Jeremy has talked about. And of course, like always, we'll see you again next week. Thank you so much for listening, and thank you to our show partners for making Slick Talk, the hospitality podcast, possible. We hope you enjoyed the show, and we would love to connect with you outside of the podcast. So you can follow us on all of our social media channels for daily hospitality content, or find us on slicktalkthepodcast.com. And don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe so you never miss an episode. I'm your host, Will Slickers, and we will see you guys all again next week. What's up, Slick Talkers? This episode is brought to you by my first time ever sponsors and partners at Hostfully. Now, the whole point of sponsorship for me is to try to make it as simple for you as possible, so that way you have no-brainer solutions for your business as you continue to dive into Slick Talk content. So Hostfully, basically in the simplest format that I can describe them, is they are your hub for running your short-term rental business and brand. Hostfully has the best channel partners and integrations such as Airbnb, Vrbo, and of course Booking.com. They have the best integration marketplace so you can connect to other sponsors like Safely, Minute, and other tech solutions for your business. And they have the best features in order to help you run your business smoothly, just like their mobile app. So you can not only have Hostfully on your desktop, but you can have Hostfully on the go with your mobile device anywhere in the world, as long as you have Wi-Fi and service. Now, make sure to like and subscribe to all things Hostfully, but you can grab my link in the show notes to save $100 off on their PMP, which is their property management platform. And of course, you'll have access to their amazing digital guidebooks to help